Welcome to the Locker Room podcast. It's only been a few days ago, it seems like we were doing a podcast, Joe, about the GAA return to play protocols and guidelines. And we were due to do one on S&C and sports science in professional football, just to cater for some of our other audience. But in the last few days, a whole new topic has kind of come into play online and through the GAA as regards the guidelines on the return to play for the clubs and the structures and the competitions from the county boards. So we said that let's get this podcast out. We've got John Fogarty from the Irish Examiner, luckily with us, who definitely seems to have his finger on the pulse over the last week. John, you seem to have a red hotline phone to Tom Ryan's office up in Croke Park. You seem to get all the inside scoops.
No, not at all, Ciaran. It's just a case of making a few phone calls. That's it. And talking to a few county chairmen, a few county secretaries, and getting a feel for the place. Obviously, I was part of a media call with Tom Ryan and John Horan last week, and we got the rundown from Fergal McGill, who's the director of club, player and games administration, and he gave the idea. He basically explained the outline, what they were going to give the clubs up until the 11th of October, coming back hopefully at the end of July. Obviously that depends on social restrictions, the distancing being reduced from 2 meters. That's a huge thing, but I think there's an understanding at this stage that that's going to happen. But then it just took off with counties starting from Monday. I think Kilkenny were one of the first just to explain this is what we're going to do, and it's fine for Kilkenny. With all respect to them, they don't have a huge football element. They can really just go with they can stage the football championship, I would imagine, even during the hurling inter-county championship. But obviously for the likes of Wexford, and I imagine we'll be talking about them, and for the likes of dual counties, it's certainly a lot more difficult to get your ducks in a row. Obviously with the two codes and then the inter-county championship as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a fascinating subject, really, because you see, I think a lot of the issues and the problems currently that the GAA are facing and over the last few years is probably all about to come to head now with this issue as regards are we a club player organisation? Where's the dynamic of the club versus county, or is it and county? Where does the county manager sit? The power of the county boards, the power of the county boards given from Croke Park. They give them a lot of kind of responsibility to come up with their own plans. So I think it's a really, really interesting topic. We've got Joe Coulter back. Joe, I'm delighted to say we found a sponsor for your substantial wages. The UK government aren't paying you enough, obviously, as a maths teacher. So I'm after sourcing a fantastic... First of all, welcome back.
Thanks, Ciaran. Great to be back. Great to have you on, John.
So just to give a shout out to our sponsors, it's I mentioned it the last day, it's ripped.app. They've come on board with us. Brilliant service. I've been using it with the business. We're about to launch a new DSS online training. We've got a free webinar Monday week. So we're going to go through the software with Cormac and some of the lads. And just to give you a quick bit of info about RIP, so it's a platform that connects coaches with clients and athletes, helps you to create individualized workout programs and deliver them into an app. And then your athletes and players and teams can access all that information there. They can see their reps and sets and exercises. It's like your online training, only much, much better, and using technology and everything like that as well. They can record their workout, their training loads, their well-being data, and that all feeds back into the coach and the S&C coach. So it's a really, really brilliant piece of software. And Cormac and the lads have been great with us. They have a special offer at the moment with the DSS website. So just head over to dailysportscience.com and you get 2 months free subscription then with the platform. So we're really delighted to have them on board, and it means that we can keep Joe Coulter with us as well on the show. Okay, John, can you tell us then just a little bit of information at the beginning about what was the official line from the GAA? Is it a rule? Is it a guideline? And are we waiting for some more guidance from the GAA as regards how the obviously we're waiting for the inter-county structure, but is there going to be further guidance for county boards and clubs?
I imagine there is going to be, Ciaran, in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be extremely busy. A lot of directives or guidelines coming from Croke Park. As far as I know, it's not necessarily a rule. Although management committee, you might be aware, management committee have been given the power, or were empowered, basically given Congress powers with regard to structuring the inter-county championship and also the calendar year, or what's left of it. It's mad to say that, isn't it, in June, of what's left of the year, but we've lost so much at this stage. But yeah, they've been given the power to provide the guidelines, and there's a question of the 14th of September, which is obviously when inter-county teams can come back officially, and I use that word. The operative word is officially, because I think we all know, speaking to the Waterford senior hurling manager, Liam Cahill, earlier in the week, he was saying, if anybody thinks that we're going to stick to this, they're completely naive. And you know what, not that I condone it, but I can completely understand it, because you have to, and it's something I'm sure we'll talk about it in a while, Ciaran, is that the power of the inter-county manager. A lot of these guys are either in their first year who want to make serious impressions, or are in their last, like the likes of Declan Bonner is in his last. Rory Gallagher obviously is in his first in Derry. Mickey Hart is in the last of his current agreement. So we saw Turlock O'Brien step down, because obviously he sees the 20, a very altruistic decision, in my opinion anyway. He saw that the 2020 season was going to fold over into the 2021. So he said, listen, I'm sure he saw this season as the season that he was going to step away. He wanted to give somebody a clean break, and that's completely understandable. But there's so many. You said it in a nutshell earlier on, Ciaran. This has exacerbated the whole club versus county issue. We should be celebrating. I know it was written earlier in the week. Why should we be complaining about a return? Shouldn't we be celebrating it, when certainly a couple of months ago a lot of us felt that we weren't going to see any games this year? But now that we have games, we always want something to complain about. But we know that the relationship between club and county isn't healthy, and now it's been exacerbated hugely by the rush that we now have in terms of trying to get a season squeezed into what's left in 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to jump in there, Joe, we're putting out the call for Turlock O'Brien and a great friend of the show, Stevie Poacher, your buddy, to come on the show one of the days, and we must have a chat with them about a few of our London v Carlow battles and everything like that, Joe. We must get them on.
Yeah, absolutely, Ciaran. Yeah, it'd be great to get Turlow on and Stevie Poocher on, because we had some good battles with him, and it'd be good to hear, their time at Carlow and how they planned everything in a little bit more detail. That'd be very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Turlock is a great man, interested in his cycling and everything. It's interesting, John, because it seems like this is about to become, and it probably already has, a massive own goal in terms of PR for the GAA, because they probably over the last few months, they kind of tapped into the pulse of the nation in Ireland, in that they were being very conservative as regards their return to play. The local community, the club, with the GAA Club is at the heart of it. They were out, they were helping people, they were bringing food to old people, they were bringing fuel, and it really showed the best of the GAA coming together. And then I suppose John Horn, I was relatively critical of President John Horn, a while back, by saying that there will be no return to games while social distancing measures are in place, because I thought, well, that's just not going to happen. The GAA will definitely return in the short to medium term, which ended up happening. But in the space of a week of everybody saying, brilliant, the GAA is back, I can't believe it, we're going to be watching games, whether it's behind closed doors or not or whatever, in the space of a week, everybody now is again throwing their hands up in the air and saying the GAA don't care about us. They don't care about the club player. This shows the divide. I mean, in some ways, could they have handled this situation much better in hindsight?
I think they could have. To be flippant about it initially, I think it shows that we're back, if you know what I mean, that we're complaining. That does show one reason, but I can understand. My criticism of Croke Park is not a huge one. I would have felt that county coming back first would have been not the ideal situation, but it would have been a more appropriate situation for a number of reasons. Number one, safety-wise, less numbers, more controlled. The likes of John Kiley, the Limerick senior hurling manager, said to me recently, our players are used to being tested if the testing mechanism was to come in. But it was more controlled. It would have come back. It would have provided GAA with an opportunity to take some of their commercial money back. Like I think there's 19 million on the table there. They would have been able to recoup some of that. That would have hopefully have stimulated the organisation, because as we know, there's no money there at the moment. But also, I think it could have been run off very quickly in 2 months, and then the rest of the year could have been given to the clubs. I just thought coming back with the clubs raises a huge amount of issues. Number one, in terms of the amount of players involved, the amount of families that are involved, the amount of families that they have to go back to, and the more I'm convinced of that. Well, I've seen this past week. I can understand where the GAA are coming from, bringing back the clubs. When the clubs come back, Tom Ryan said it to me there last Saturday. When the clubs come back, that means the GAA is back. But is it too soon? That's what it feels like at the moment, to bring back the clubs right now. When I say idealistic, I don't put a lot of this at Croke Park. I put this at county boards, who basically are, it is a case of the tail wagging the dog in some ways. Don't get me wrong, there's some county boards where, from what I'm hearing from players, who are absolutely delighted with what the structure that they have. They're going to be playing when the sod is dry. They're going to be playing when, not in the muck and the dirt of November and the end of October or whatever. That'll be left now to the inter-county teams. But Croke Park I think they entrusted, there was too much trust given to county boards to do the right thing. This goes back to April as a club month in the past as well, to do the right thing, to get a couple of championship games in there. Now Croke Park then said, well, we never said they should have championship games there, but I think they, that was the intention, to get their championship running at a time of year where the weather is good. Now we're going to see blitzes of county championships. We're going to see, and we're already hearing it this week, of players who are already disillusioned and disenchanted now feeling even more so. And that is a huge concern, particularly in Wexford, where the reports from some players is quite worrying.
Yeah, it's a major problem. It's really interesting, because you've had a few days ago where the announcement of clubs returning first, and everybody's saying, okay, brilliant, this is great, we're getting back out on the pitch, we'll have loads of games. And then it's like, well, the county boards have decided that actually we're going to shorten your season in order for the county teams to come back training. And it just feels inherently wrong to me, like, regardless of all the different structures and recovery, and I get all of that, the sports science of it, but that to me just feels wrong. I found it interesting that you mentioned about getting the clubs back, or the county team back first, because I actually did a piece for James Cox with Buzz.ie the last day, and it was the day before the announcement was made, and I made a big thing with him to say that, look, the county team should return first, and exactly for the reasons that you mentioned about the testing. Those players will be fitter, they're following their programs. The other thing as well, like you say, about the money, and we have to be realistic, like the county team does pay for everything in the GAA, including people's wages, game promotion officers. But by putting the county game in the depths of the winter, I mean, it doesn't make sense from a commercial point of view. So in some ways, I'm quite surprised. And also, you've less teams, you've less grounds, you've less teams. So I am surprised that they didn't do that. But anyway, that's it.
Just on that, Ciaran, I think maybe one of the reasons why Croke Park wanted to push the All-Ireland Championship further out was because maybe the possibility that the R rate goes down, and then you go back to 1 metre social distancing, and then you're maybe getting bums on seats in Croke Park. I think John Horn mentioned maybe 21,000 people into Croke Park, which actually I think it's not going to happen. So I think from that point of view, maybe the GAA were looking at that.
Yeah. It's a calculated risk, isn't it, John, doing it that way, I think.
It is. Whatever way they did this, the GAA were going to be criticised. And going club first, as I say, it seems the idealistic thing. It's certainly in terms of optics, absolutely the right thing to do. But the further you go into it, and the further you realise that clubs are going to be playing off like in such a short space of time. And don't get me wrong, I repeat it, some counties from players I've been speaking to are happy with it, but you can see it out there at the moment. There is disgruntlement and there is frustration that a minority are being prioritised here. And don't get me wrong, there's another, Joe mentioned the financial aspect of it as well. Club championships are needed to fund county teams as well, but when club championships are run over such a short space of time, you do wonder about whether the integrity and whether the sovereignty of the competitions are going to be impacted too much, and is there going to be a lasting effect? I imagine the CPA are going to be very busy over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think before we move on, I think it was a massive own goal by the GAA, and unfortunately a lot of it wasn't their fault, in that, like you say, that they probably entrusted a lot of responsibility to the county boards, expecting them that they would take advantage of that whole 11-week period. They haven't, for reasons that we'll go into in a minute. But in some ways, like I often think of the GAA of that, they are controlled by the members ultimately. And why are they not thinking more like a political party or a government in place, whereby sometimes you have to do U-turns and sometimes the optics are as important as the actual protocols you put in place. And I'm surprised that doesn't seem to dawn on them, in terms of this situation, in terms of funding for Dublin. A lot of times optics are nearly as important, if not more important, than the actual reality on the ground. And I find that surprising with them. So, okay, let's move on. So just give us a flavour, John, for some of the counties, what they're planning to do and how they're planning on utilising or not utilising their 11 weeks.
Well, the funny, as I mentioned, Kilkenny started the ball rolling, Ciaran, earlier in the week, and then I wrote a piece which doesn't look prescient at all now, because in fairness, it was what was said to me at the time, but obviously things are changing so much at the moment, and we have to bear in mind, gents, that there could be an extra week given, or even 2 weeks given to clubs come next month, and let's hope it is. But obviously, safety first. But earlier in the week, it was here. Certainly, Galway looked like they're going to have both their football final, senior football final is going to happen on the 20th of September. I think Mayo's is going to be the same. Galway's hurling final is going to be on the 27th of September. Now that's right. Now, I was told that Wexford's finals were going to be in September, but obviously that has since changed, or at least that's the proposal at the moment, to run with the hurling competition first in August, and then start at the end of August the football championship, and hopefully finish it up then towards the end of September. Kerry now have since changed as well. Kerry were looking at September for their county championship. Obviously they have the club championship, which is just clubs, and they have the county championship, which includes the divisional, and the divisional that part, the county championship, that's going to conclude now in the first week in October. And interestingly, the club championship looks like it's penciled in for the 18th of October, so that you could have a situation where there's a club championship happening without county players. That'll be very interesting, and obviously there could be a little bit of controversy there, but it's still reckoned that the county championship is the one to win, if you know what I mean, regarding the divisions. Slowly but surely we've heard a bit more. Tyrone last night are proposing, in the main we are seeing September as the county final period, although there are a couple of exceptions, like Kerry, Cavan and Meath. In the last couple of days, Cavan and Meath are looking at the 4th of October for their football final, and Cavan for the 11th. Now, that raises a huge amount of issues. Like, obviously, we're hearing at this moment in time that the inter-county period could restart with the outstanding league matches, which is grand. That's fair. That's all well and good. That would suggest to me that we're looking at straight knockout. Because from what I'm hearing, there's a determination to finish the championships in 2020, whereby there's no leakage, so to speak, going into 2021. The concern then for the likes of Cavan, and I'm saying this purely from an inter-county point of view, is that if they have a first-round game against Monaghan the week after the Cavan County final, there's going to be ructions. There's going to be ructions. But the likes of Cork and Tipperary are keeping their powder dry at the moment. Both of them have, Cork have a new setup, which I think is a great idea. The groups The ideal situation for a senior county championship is between 12 to 16 teams. 12 is the golden number from all the secretaries I've been speaking to. 12 is the golden number, but Tipperary have a very convoluted, both football and hurling, are very convoluted, and they accept that themselves. They have, there's possibility of 32 teams winning a senior county championship. Both themselves and Cork are waiting to see what the Central Competitions Control Committee are going to do. Are they going to start the inter-county period on the 17th of October with the outstanding Alliance League games, or are they going to go straight into provincial championships?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because that 14-day rule, I presume, will probably be scrapped, won't it?
Like
so the 14-day rule where you can't play a club game inside 14 days of a county championship match.
Again, I think that everything is up for grabs.
That'll probably go, yeah. I mean, it like, first off, with my sports science hat on, given players, for instance, a week between a club county final and then an inter-county, let's even say championship game, would be absolute madness. If you think you wouldn't expect that to happen, but you wouldn't know what will happen in some ways. So we're waiting for the GAA to come forward with the inter-county calendar first. Like, is there talk of that yet, or when is that going to come out?
That's going to come out before the start of phase 3. All going well, and we're hearing that the government this week, the Irish government, are looking at accelerating things even more so that basically the 26 counties are predominantly open for business and open to society by the middle of next month. Like, if we're talking this time next month, that will be the open period. Yeah, so basically, I would imagine by the end of next week, the Central Competitions Control Committee will have something drafted, but they won't release it until such time as they're confident that the government are ready to move on to the next phase. Because if you could argue last week that the GAA were a little bit, I certainly felt that the GAA were a little bit out of step, a little bit too conservative in the sense that they should have held fire on releasing the roadmap, because they signed off on a Thursday night, and then the Friday morning the government decide, well, we're going to accelerate things.
Yeah.
So now, don't get me wrong, the GAA, in being conservative, are certainly looking like, safety first, and they've people's interests in mind, which obviously they do. You can see the amount of work that's going to have to be done now to be a compliance officer in clubs and whatever, and that has to be commended in many ways. But at the same time, they don't want to be left behind, and I know a lot of officials in Croke Park feel that as well. They don't want to be left behind, because when the Premier League, it doesn't matter, I made this point before, it doesn't matter that the Premier League is professional when it comes to hearts and minds, and the kids are looking at something, and there's no cool clamps, not for the time being anyway. The only thing they're going to be looking at from Wednesday onwards are guys playing in the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. And we made this point before, whereby you have to follow the numbers. And at the beginning of this crisis, like, the Irish government stepped in really well, locked down very fast and very early and fully in some ways. Like, it was a slightly different situation over here in London for myself and Joe, which we spoke about before. Joe, we're not going to get into your Corbynista supporting Marcus on this show. We'll spare John that. But then it's the same thing on when you're coming out on the other side. If the numbers are so low and showing that, okay, you can reopen, well, then you should follow that. You should follow the science. And I think the GAA were a little bit conservative in that. And listen, we as you say, things can change so quickly. It might be something new on Monday night or anything. Joe, you had a look at the Tyrone and Armagh, wasn't it? And they had a bit of a whopper of a games program.
Yeah, if you look at I don't think Armagh have released theirs yet, but if you look at Tyrone's model, Tyrone are actually going to split their league in two. So Division 1 is going to be split in two. So it's going from 16 to 8. So that means that they're going to be playing off 7 league games minimum. And then they're going to have, I think John might be able to correct me here, they're going to have a knockout championship as well. So for each player, that should be a minimum of 8 games, which if I was a club player, that'd be brilliant, because you're going to get 8 games.
Sure,
a lot of players will probably get 10 games if they get to the final. And if you look at Tyrone as well, this is obviously they don't have hurling as much, but they have aspirations to win the All-Ireland. So I think that's a really fair deal for the Tyrone club player. And, you know, Tyrone County Board have to be commended for that. And I think if you look at the other Ulster counties, I think Armagh are going down a similar route. I think Down will also be doing something similar. So there seems to be unity there in terms of what's happening in Ulster, which is a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
Tyrone, Ciaran, one of the success stories has been the knockout championship for them in the last few years. It's been hugely popular, and
right.
they wouldn't move away from that. And it looks like Joe mentioned Armagh there. It looks like Armagh are looking at a knockout championship as well.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. So, and do they then heighten up the importance of the league? So, because like if you get knocked out in the first round in championship, then you're done.
I know that's it's a very interesting thing, and you can see with some of the plans that certainly the August bank holiday weekend, which you guys I'm sure have your expertise, coming back, you know, into a competitive game, whether it be league or championship, you know, 11 days after you're officially permitted to return to contact training. Like,
yeah. It'll be interesting. We had a Zoom meeting this morning, myself, Joe, and Ross Bennett, who's head of performance with us, and we're trying to come up with plans and everything like that. So it's an accelerated, progressive, intensified period. That's the way I would have to describe that. But it is. Look, it's possible. There'll definitely be people will fall by the wayside, but you know that will happen. Joe, we had plenty of experience of that with London, trying to get our lads up to a level to compete. But obviously, you'll have players then getting injured when you're trying to get to that level.
Yeah, and that's the big problem, Ciaran. But, you know, if you look at the ratio of games to training for club players now, for example, in Tyrone, it's going to be around 50-50. Yeah. You know, so every other event's going to be a match, which is great, which is what club players actually want, because the ratio was 2 in favour of training.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just interested, John, how did county boards get this so wrong then? Because in some ways, like what Joe is explaining there, it's so not easy to come up with a good schedule of games. But how are they getting so much criticism, and why? Like, why did they not come up with a in some ways, to me, like a very simple model of that? If you're a single code county, if you can call yourself that, in some ways, like Tyrone, you just play lots of games, you know, put in recovery periods if you want. With a dual county, surely it makes sense to alternate weekends, because like in a normal situation, another year, that's what you do anyway. So if I'm a footballer, I play every second weekend. If I'm a footballer and a hurler, I play every weekend, and that's the norm.
Yeah, county. It's sad to say in many ways, but county boards are still defer so much to the managers, and I think that's why, whether it's true or not, and I think it is in the main, I think it is true. But again, we come back to perspective, Ciaran, and the optics of it at the moment would indicate that the manager is calling all the shots. We all know who are the strong managers, those who are there the longest, basically.
Yeah.
And we know that their counsel would be valued, and that's putting it nicely, as regard when it comes to devising championships and whatever. The fact that it is knockout, or it looks like it's going to be knockout for the inter-county championships, I think raises the stakes a little bit more. And the point, I would imagine, with phone calls between managers and county board chairmen and secretaries during the week was, well, we've only one chance at this. You have got to give us the opportunity. You have got to give me the opportunity to get these boys right for the end of October or whatever it is for Halloween. And it looks like it probably will be Halloween by the time the provincial championships are starting. And it seems to be that, like, there's still talk of an open knockout competition, but I think just to give us some flavour at least, or some semblance of normality, there will be provincial championships, albeit a knockout. Yeah. But that element of knockout, Ciaran, I think has swayed some people in terms of preparations and in terms of formatting their competitions.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has an agenda, don't they? Like when you're the senior inter-county manager, you're tasked with taking care of your team, and like your head is on the chopping block, whereby you're either successful and you keep your position, we won't call it job, or you're not successful and you lose your position. So you have to be selfish, and the club manager, the club player has to be focused on, well, their club team, and that's a normal dynamic. So when people are saying the GAA or Croke Park are too focused on the county teams and the county setup, like, is it really a problem actually that the county boards are the problem? That your county chairman or woman or secretary or whatever, that they're the ones, like, they're the custodians of Gaelic games in their county, and they need to balance off between the club, county, funding, etc., and that they're actually the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Paul Duffy said it a few years ago in an interview. He was asked, I think he was sitting down with John Delaney and Philip Brown at the time, and I think the question was asked, what do you envy of the other two? And John Delaney said, the media that the GAA gets, it doesn't seem to be as bad. Now, the people in Croke Park will disagree with that. But Pádraig Duffy was asked, he said, I wish I had the power, or more of the power that you guys seem to have, Delaney and Brown, because he described it, I'm working with 32 republics. And that's what it is. And it's not a case of washing their hands or anything like that, but the GAA can say, Croke Park can safely say, Fergal McGill can safely say, guys, I gave you the opportunity. There's 11 weeks, it's actually just over 11 weeks. There's 11 weeks there to hold worthwhile, really exciting championships, and you didn't use it. And because you didn't use it, good luck to you. But at the same time, suggesting that the 14th of September that inter-county teams could come back then, that really was an issue, was an anomaly, because what are you supposed to do then? Just say the following weekend you're playing with your club in a county semi-final. Are you supposed to train with your county during the week and jettison your club? There was questions about that, and nothing was going to be perfect on this. As I said to you, Ciaran, they were going to be criticised in any shape or form, whatever they did. And I repeat it, we are back in that way. But I just feel if they went, very much like yourself, if they had gone county first, it would have been a clean break. Yes, they would have been shot down, and they would have been criticised. Oh geez, you're literally putting county first this time, but it would have given 4 months of unfettered access. And it's awful to use that word when it comes to clubs, because clubs should simply have them. But it would have been such a clean break for them.
Yeah. They probably muddied the waters, didn't they? Like just what you referred to there, by saying that counties can have access to the players from the 14th of September, because it was club until 11th of October, then it's county season, and that's very simple, clean break. Now, it is more complicated than that, isn't it? Because if you're knocked out early stages out of Tyrone club and you're playing county, what do you do then for the next 6 weeks? Like, you just sit on your hands. You obviously want to go back and start training with the county and getting prepared. I mean, the reality for Fergal McGill and the lads, and there's some really good people obviously up in Croke Park, is that it's in some ways it's not their responsibility, and in that they've handed this over to 32, republics, as you could say, the county boards. But the truth doesn't matter sometimes, and it's the optics of that actually ultimately Croke Park are in charge, and they need to take ultimate responsibility as well. So, could they have? Can Croke Park come along and actually enact guidelines that, okay, county players can't return to the county team before, let's say 11th of October, or that club competitions must go on till the end of October? Was that an option at all, or is that just even more messy?
I think it would have been more messy, Ken. I've certainly noticed in the last couple of years, John Horan, from the outset when he became president, was like, we've made rules, and rules are being bent, broken, contravened, circumnavigated, all sorts of things. He said, it has to be a culture change. And we're not seeing that. We're not seeing that in any shape or form. And I do feel a degree of sympathy for Croke Park in that way, because they can only do so much. Like, people saying that they are the power wielders and whatever. And don't get me wrong, they do have a lot of power. Like, Tom Ryan remains the strongest official in Irish sport. But at the same time, their hands are tied. in some ways, and in terms of leaving it up to counties. And just as we're speaking there, another aspect which is brought up from the 14th September, we're so used to, and we've heard all the stories over the years, how a club player reaching an All-Ireland final on St. Patrick's Day has been deprived of league action with their county. And they're being victims of their own success. Their club success has deprived them of county success. The likes of Currafin on the last couple of years, there's been elements of that. I remember when a string of Dublin champions were going to All-Ireland finals on St. Patrick's Day, and because they weren't getting an opportunity to impress Jim Gavin, they were left out in the cold, or at least they were being slowly brought back in, more so than others. It does affect you, and I think it would if teams are in county finals and they're not basically putting their hand up and showing up for county training. I think it's going to hurt them, and that really is the club versus county issue in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, we probably suffered in our time with London. We probably suffered because we came into the position and said, well, we're going to support the clubs. We want the players to go back and play as much as possible. Our lads need games. That's what they lack, the young London-born chaps. But in hindsight, if you look back, it probably affected our chance of actually being successful, because we would send the players back to the clubs and the training wouldn't be at the same level, the fitness wouldn't be at the same level. Some players would choose not to play. We can't force them to play with their clubs. And like Joe, was a bit of a disaster at times. It's a challenge to be so open with the clubs, isn't it? From a county, let's say a county's point of view. Yeah,
it is, Ciaran, especially from those county managers, that want to keep their players because they don't want to lose control of their players. They don't want to send them back to the clubs, because then you're losing out, and you might see other counties aren't sending their players to the club. It's very difficult. I can understand it from the county manager situation. And if you look at what Davy's done, I don't know if he did any say in what Wexford were doing. I'm sure you can answer that, Ciaran. But they have aspirations of winning All Ireland. And the best way to do that is to keep your players and to keep them training with you. Yeah. So you can see it from his point of view.
Yeah, John, Davy said now I don't watch Late Late Show. Can I just say that first of all? I know you two are big fans every Friday night. Davy said this year isn't about All Irelands. It's all about the club.
I'm glad to correct you on that, King. He said
there we go.
Late Late Show. Myself and Joe would know finished up a couple of weeks ago.
Thank God.
No, he said that absolutely. And I know Davy well, and I would have spoken to him a few times over the last few weeks, and there was a sense of conflict in him, because he wants to win a county title with 6 Mile Bridge. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, to win in All Ireland with Wexford would be incredible, and that's the thing that has to be brought into the situation now. Less games brings people closer to All Ireland titles. Yep. The fact that you only have to beat Dublin once, possibly. Yep. Whereas if you had to beat Dublin twice before, the fact that you only have to beat Tipperary once, if that's the case in hurling. So there's the last time. Let's not get away from this. The last time that Wexford won in All Ireland was, in '96. It was straight knockout. These things are all in people's heads. They're all in county boards' heads as well. Like, there is a little bit of ego there, and that's understandable too. Like, imagine you're the county chairman and Derek can't have a lot of time from him, but imagine if you're the county chairman that oversees Wexford winning for the first time in 24 years. Like, it's or in Joe's case, like, geez, Derry, like, it would be crazy. And yet, like, the hope that is there at the start of provincial championships, that never goes away, because every team, more or less, or every county feels that they can win a provincial title. Now, because it's straight knockout, that's increased. So that definitely adds into the conversations. Or certainly, if I was a county manager, I would be saying it to the county chairman, we have a chance here. We only have to beat them on any given day. We only have to beat them the once.
Yeah, it's a very, very conflicted feel. John, I remember 1996 well. I was having I was age 13, having a sip of a can of lager with a few girls in a field of hay outside New Ross. So I remember it well. If my mother heard that now, she'd go mad. But she loves Davy. But it's a tough one, isn't it? Because as you say, like ultimately the county manager is there to win an All-Ireland or win a provincial, and like, you're 100% correct that this is of all the years, this is the year, because aside from the structure, I see this year as so many different variables coming into it. Like, there may or may not be a crowd, so if you think you're playing against Dublin, you've got more of a chance. You've no idea what all the teams are doing. Do they have good S&C? Do they have good sports science? Will some of their main players, like Brian Fenton, picks up the hamstring injury at the beginning of the championship, he's gone for the whole season, intensified period, so you've got a chance. So I do have sympathy definitely for the county managers, and I suppose, like, I spoke to a couple of Wexford County Board people today, and they've probably rolled back a little bit and said that, well, we haven't actually voted on that the finals will take place by this date. It's nothing to do with the county manager and stuff like that. I'm sure, look, like every county, there will be pressure. And the important thing is that all these county board officials, A, they've got a really, really difficult job to do. And B, of course they care about the club players and the club teams. Like, they're all members themselves. They're all involved themselves, like Davy is and others. So it's a very, very difficult situation to be in, isn't it? You've a lot of factors pulling at the situation.
It's nuanced, and some of us don't. Many a time I wouldn't have time for that or appreciation for that, but in this situation, yeah, because you mentioned vested interests, Ciaran. It is, there's this, that, and the other. The priority is, and I know this is where you specialise in, is that the player can't lose out as a result of this. Stakes are incredibly higher. Like you met absolutely right about the example of Brian Fenton. Like, if he goes for one game, that could be the championship.
Yeah.
But that extends to the club player too.
Yeah.
Even say in a suspension in the first round, it could be out for 2 games. You're done. You are done. Everything is high stakes because of our determination and our hope that we get a season fitted into the last 5-6 months of the year. Yeah,
it's funny in some ways, because you'll have players now after training like on their own and no games and everything like that for a prolonged period. If you're from a dual county, a successful player at club and county, you might start, what is it, the 34, I know, the beginning of August. You might go from the beginning of, 11th of August, 10th or 11th of August, play a game practically every single weekend all the way till mid-December, maybe end of county season, something like that.
Yeah.
Like, I remember myself when we were very successful with our club in Wexford, and games were coming thick and fast in Leinster and everything every weekend, and we had a few replays. Wow, it's physically, psychologically, mentally very, very difficult to do.
And the worry is, I was in a Zoom call yesterday, Ciaran, with Michael Murphy. Like, the question was put to him: are you prepared for the 2020 season to become the 2021, in the sense that you could be going 16 or 17 months non-stop?
Yeah.
And like, obviously, Michael Murphy, he has thought about it, but he was saying that my priority at the moment is just to get back playing. But it raises so many issues, gents, in the sense that that there has to be some sort of definitive break. And you know this moment is that December, if it is possible, I don't think it is, but if at least half of December and half of January is regarded as a closed season, then all the better, because if we're looking at All-Ireland finals going into January and February, whatever about clubs, it's difficult enough for clubs. At the same time, it would have provided a great opportunity for clubs to raise funds over Christmas for their teams and things like that, and there would have been a great excitement. And it is going to be the idea of All-Ireland finals coming up to Christmas is tantalising in one sense, and yet in others, like, oh Jesus, it's a bit unusual. But for 1 year only, I don't think we can complain in that way. But if if it could be contained in the year, I think it would be huge. And I don't know what you think about it. Like, to think that county players could go on 17, 18 months, we could be accelerating their retirement.
The retirement, 100%. I think people will retire. I agree in that trying to get it finished by Christmas, to me, is psychologically even a very big thing. And even if players had a couple of weeks off then over Christmas, you know, a bit of downtime and everything, and then you start back into January. I mean, it's probably likely that next season, 2021, will be slightly condensed as well, like with the league or the championship. I mean, for instance, I don't see a reason why the championship shouldn't be condensed anyway. Like in a normal season, it seems to me like there's a lot of kind of downtime there in the championship that's a little bit prolonged and too much recovery time between matches, I would think, in general.
Yeah. There's always been, I think Pat Gilroy was one of those who proposed the idea of the championship becoming more of a tournament. So basically it would happen over 2 months. Now, again, that would create some demands on county players in terms of work and whatever. Like, you know, do you go into camp because you're considering you're playing every weekend, or you know, you would probably be playing every weekend? That, you know, that's bound to have some repercussions, but there is absolutely wiggle room to condense the inter-county championship even more, so no doubt about it. And they're looking at that. And in terms of streamlining it as well, I think that's more important than anything else. That the fact that, like, even the idea of Donegal and Tyrone, when you consider it, don't get me wrong, Cork and Kerry are playing in it could be a knockout game. Yeah. And Tyrone. And Tyrone and Donegal, the idea now, and we were so used to it for so many years, but the idea that one or Tyrone or Donegal could go out on the first day it's scary. Yeah, it's scary. It really is. But in terms of streamlining, in the sense that everyone would get an equal opportunity, because, you know, it's something that Jim McGuinness would have said during his time. Not that it held Donegal back too much in that way, but that it was tougher to win an All-Ireland from Ulster than it would have been from Munster at that time, or Connacht, as much as Connacht has certainly improved over the last few years. Definitely.
Joe, do you envisage any issues then between the I have to be very careful with my wording here, John, because with the Northern boys, Sean Kavanagh got wrapped across the knuckles on Twitter about saying the UK. So, Joe, I'm not going to say that you live up in the UK. Well, you do live in the UK, in London. But between, like, the administrations in Northern Ireland and, like, we're veering more into the kind of government advice and stuff. And if the UK advice is going to be different, which it looks likely it will be, than the Irish government, like, is that going to cause some trouble as regards playing in the All-Irelands?
It could, Ciaran, but I think Stephen McGeehan of the Ulster GAA, he was on a couple of days ago, and he said, well, you know, Ulster club football is going to start at the same time. It's going to start on the 31st of July. So from that point of view, and I think yesterday Michelle O'Neill and Orling Foster were saying that elite athletes or elite groups can come back very soon. So I think what the Ulster GAA are trying to do is they're trying to just align it with the 26 counties. Right. So I think that's sort of part of the negotiations that they're having with the Northern Ireland Executive. And so I don't think there will be any major problems there, not unless John knows something else.
No, absolutely. And I actually never had any worries about Ulster in that regard, the 6 counties, that is. I spoke to Peter Canavan at the outset of it. I think it was around the time Peter was turning 50, and we were all looking for angles and stories at that time. But I just asked Peter, I said, are you worried that, you know, Ulster could fall behind in the sense that it could be behind in terms of numbers and the number and what have you? He says, no. I said, John, we've been taken out. He was only speaking obviously from a GA perspective, but he said, we don't take our lead from Stormont. We take our lead from GA clubs, or from Park, I should say. Yeah. And you know, we'll be right, and he's proven to be right. I don't see. I think, Joe, you outlined it perfectly there. I don't think there's going to be any issue with regard to 6 counties. And if there were, then we wait, and that's what we have to do, because it's a 32 county organisation.
Yeah, that's interesting. Joe will be delighted to hear you saying that, because he wants to accelerate on the border poll, so he'll see the COVID. First there's Brexit, now there's the COVID crisis. We had Declan Bogue on a few weeks ago chatting about it with Joe as well. So we might have an all-Ireland anyway, but Joe, we better not mention any more than that. John, last few things. Is there any talk in the intercounty about the Tailteann Cup, the B Championship, and also qualifiers? Is there any talk about qualifiers?
The only suggestion about qualifiers, first of all, Ciaran, is that there might be a second chance for provincial runners-up. That's the only thing I've heard. Right. Hurling is different, but I don't think it can be one rule for hurling. It'd be very easy in an 8-week period to provide a minimum of 2 games if you were to go with the 10 Lee McCarthy Cup teams. But obviously then the 2 McDonagh's that come in, that causes a little bit of difficulty in that regard. But the only thing from a football perspective I've heard is provincial winners getting a second chance. But we'll wait and see about that. That wouldn't cause an issue, just creates another weekend in terms of quarterfinals. As regards to Tailteann Cup, the B Championship, so to speak, that's been postponed until next year. Tom Ryan said that the other week. So whatever was supposed to happen this year, the final experimental year, the Super 8s, that's going to be moved on to next year, and special Congress then regarding the whole calendar regarding the football championship. That's going to, I would imagine that's going to take place next year, but no B championship this year, no.
Okay. What about the talk of the restructuring and as regards flipping the league and championship and some of those ideas? Is that parked a year on down the line then also?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the earliest we'll see it as 2022, because it could be discussed at Congress now in February, don't get me wrong, but then that would be too late. It usually is too late for the forthcoming championship. I think they'll want to give one more year just to see how the Super 8 it has it bedded in. That that's a matter of opinion for all of us. I don't think it has necessarily, but it's very strange to just transplant a league format into the middle of a knockout competition. Has always been my way, and there was more of a glass ceiling put in front of or put on at the top of the heads of the developing counties, which was the issue for me. But that's going to be parked for the time being. We're going to see the third and final experimental year of the Super 8s next season. Right.
Okay. Last quick question. The GPA have gone silent. The CPA, is this the time that they actually really step up to the plate and grasp this issue, and like they've started putting out a few tweets and stuff like that? Is this the coming hour, coming to man now for the CPA?
Yeah, I think we'll hear from the GPA, I would imagine. They're being consulted at the moment as regards by the CCCC, and they're bound to have huge concerns about the 16-month season, or whatever it is, 18-month season, which could face a lot of their members. That's bound to be a huge concern. But I could see something concerted between the club and the county, the CPA and the GPA. They're not as much as you might think, where we've been speaking for the last 50 minutes about club versus county. They see, they're on the same page on a few things now. Don't get me wrong, the GPA would like to see an extended inter-county season. And that's one point where they differ, but every GPA member is a CPA or a club member, so there is aspects there. Regarding the CPA, I said it earlier on, I think we're going to see them very busy over the next few weeks, and you can see it with Liam Griffin as well. I think it was the Irish Independent today mentioning that the idea that a club player could be out of a championship in the space of 4 or 5 days where they to lose those 2 games, it's just not right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we'll leave it there. Okay, thanks, John. We just a final shout out about our kind sponsors, so rip.app. So head over either onto our website, deelysportscience.com, or their website, and you get 2 months free membership. Great way of S&C coaches and sports science to link in with their players online, sending them programs. Everything is done through the app, so you don't have to send them anything that way, and it's a really brilliant resource. We're delighted to have them aligned with us and with the show. John, thanks very much. I think in summary, it's probably it's a little bit of a mess at the moment. Everybody is going in different directions and everything like that. I wonder, will we see in the next few days a little bit of a swing back from some counties in that they may have not envisaged such bad PR and people rising up against this, and they might say, well, actually, instead of us finishing in September, which I think is inherently wrong in the situation, we might push our finals back into October. Could you see something like that happening?
If there's an indication from the GAA that they're going to start the inter-county period with league games, that might just give that little bit more of a leeway. But the idea that you could go straight into provincial championship and a straight knockout provincial championship, I think that's what's worrying county managers and therefore county boards.
Those damn county managers. Exactly. Okay, well, that will be a really interesting one. So we'll hold our fire on that, and so really it comes back to Croke Park then, if they enact that change by playing the last 2 league games. And in ways it does make sense because they're lower intensity games. You have a chance to reintroduction to playing matches. You have a chance to introduce some of the younger players and get up to speed, and then you enter into a knockout intercounty championship. Then it would probably make sense, wouldn't it?
That's it, Ciaran. And the interesting, there's going to be a few case examples here, but Cavan will be an interesting one. As we mentioned at the outset, 11th of October, county final, and they're in the running to get promoted from Division 2. So let's see how Mikey Graham feels about that. But clearly he's been told about this. There's nobody going on solo runs as regards county managers. County managers are well briefed on these things. So
yeah. Exactly. We'll keep an eye on Davy, see what Davy says, and we'll take our lead from him then. Okay, John, thanks very much. Brilliant to have you on the show, and we'd love to get you back on, hopefully when the games are back up and running at some stage.
Pleasure, gents.